Warning, this podcast contains alcohol and reference to alcohol. You must be at least 21 years of age to watch or listen.
Welcome to Holladay Happy Hour, presented by the Holladay Distillery in Weston, Missouri. I'm Jordan, and today I have a very special guest joining us from Jersey. I have Frank Dobbins, so welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Jordan.
You may know Frank as his handle, which is BourbYourEnthusiasm. So Frank has a strong community on Instagram, also very active on X, formerly known as Twitter. But he's a journalist, a content creator, and a judge of whiskey and is it all whiskey? Spirits competition.
Oh, no, it's all spirits.
All spirits.
Yes.
Okay, so not just whiskey.
That's
so he's
correct.
a spirits judge as well. So we'll talk about all that. But before we dive in, welcome to Weston.
Thank you, Jordan.
We're so happy to have you.
No, it's a really pleasure to be here because I love what I've been seeing so far. Weston is gorgeous. It's a quaint little town. There are rolling hills, farmland. It's beautiful. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Yeah, it's we still have a lot to see, so we'll have to do a catch up after we see the rest.
I can't wait.
Well, let's dive right in. I am just kind of interested. How did you get started just in journalism in general? Like, what did that start look like for you?
Oh, sure. I mean, it started in kindergarten. I've always been into English and, the English language, so I was always a strong writer growing up. So that was kind of the passion that I pursued. Once I got to college, I went to school for journalism, and from there, I knew that I wanted to write as a profession, so I started exploring that, and where it started for me with whiskey was really in 2020. The pandemic happened as a lot of people were stuck at home. I was stuck at home as well. And I wanted a job that I could work remotely, so writing seemed like it would be perfect. So I kind of took what I had as my passion for writing, I incorporated my passion for whiskey, and that's kind of how it came together.
That's awesome. Do you remember the very first whiskey that you ever wrote about?
Ooh, the first whiskey I ever wrote about was something that was local, a New York whiskey. It was something that I felt like people weren't really appreciating. I was surprised at how good it was, and you hear so many things about Kentucky being the only place you can get bourbon, but that's not true. You can get great bourbon across the country. Right. So I was really happy to write about something that was local.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's how people learn.
Yeah.
Especially the more you write, they're like, Frank knows his stuff. Because, you're always covering the good stuff. So along with this bourbon journey that you've taken on, you also have become a judge for the New York. I'm going to mess it up now. I just said it. New York. I thought it was whiskey.
No.
Wine and spirits.
And spirits, yes.
So you do wine as well?
I don't do the wine, but I do spirits, all spirits.
All the spirits,
yes.
Wow. So tell me about that. I'm really interested to know kind of how you got into being a judge and like what are the qualifications for that? Like what does that look like?
I actually don't know if I'm qualified, but I'm still trying to figure that out. But so I did it last year, the New York Wine and Spirits competition, and I had a blast. It was a great time. You go in, they give you these nice white lab coats, so it feels very official. And then you try a whole bunch of spirits blind. You're with a table of other panelists, other judges, and you go through all the spirits. Like I said, you're tasting them blind, so you don't know exactly what you're drinking. You just know the category that they're in, and you score them, according to whatever your palate is. And sometimes there's a little bit of crosstalk, but for the most part, everyone has their own opinion and brings their own experience to the table. So it was a really fun time trying to do that. And then also I'll be doing it again this year, so I'm looking forward to that. That's in September. Yeah.
Awesome. So do you participate with all the spirit categories then?
So they'll throw as many categories at you as you feel comfortable with. So you won't have judges who aren't familiar with tequila, for instance, doing tequila judging. But if you're comfortable with tequila, then that will be an option for you. So I was doing, whiskey for sure, and then a few other spirits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you recently shared with me, too, that you are a fan of rum. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about rum and kind of like the different ways that you taste that versus the way you would taste whiskey?
Oh, sure. So one of the things that's interesting about rum is that it isn't as standardized across the globe as it is with whiskey. I mean, specifically bourbon, right? So when you talk about American whiskey, bourbon in particular, there's a very particular set of rules that defines what bourbon is, and everyone has to stick to that. When it comes to rum, because it's such a global phenomenon and something that people are enjoying in different regions, there are so many different laws and rules that go into producing it. So you can have, different using sugar cane, you can have molasses, and the flavor profiles that you get from different regions of the world are just so wildly different than what you get in whiskey. So when you drink rum and you try to taste rum as compared to, say, whiskey, you have to kind of have that in mind. You have to think more about terroir and the region that these rums are coming from and kind of take that into account when you're tasting it, as opposed to just saying everything is the same, all rum is the same, because it's not.
Right. That's so interesting. So if you were going to drink rum like in a cocktail,
Yes.
or would you drink it neat? Is that something you would do?
Oh, absolutely.
Or, yeah?
I
Okay.
love sipping rums. But if you put it in a cocktail, there's so many different things you can play with there also. So it's a really versatile spirit.
Wow. It's everything that I think about with rum goes back to the mojito. Because when I was newly 21, like that was the thing.
That's the
we were
go-to.
making mojitos. And so, yeah, I don't think I've personally ever considered just drinking rum neat.
It's
So that's
a
something.
wild, wide world. You should try it.
I'm inspired. I'm going to try it one of these days. Awesome. So we talked about how you're a journalist.
Yes.
Talk to me about your latest venture with Up Rocks.
Oh.
I want to hear all about your transition into that role and
sure.
what that looks like.
So I was already doing spirits writing, whiskey writing primarily for a few different publications, and this opportunity came for me to work with Up Rocks. I jumped at it because Up Rocks is a fantastic publication. I love the work that they're doing. I was already reading all of their work. So to be able to work with that team, it was honestly a dream come true. Ever since I've gotten on board, I've realized that it truly is a dream come true because everyone over there is fantastic. I love my editorial team. I love the ownership team that we now have over there. And I love the freedom that it kind of affords me also. Doing whiskey is great. It's what I love. It's something that I'll always want to pursue. But having an opportunity to do certain other things like pursuing music a little bit or, culture, those things are really cool to me too. So the fact that Up Rocks has a big footprint in those spaces really kind of just gives me more versatility in my writing, and it's just a fun job.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like a lot of great experiences come with that too, like travel and then a lot of like creative freedom.
Yeah.
Which is great.
There is a lot of creative freedom. And I think that the travel is also really cool too. I mean, being able to see Weston, for instance, that's really awesome. But also going places internationally, going to different whiskey producing states and stuff like that. It's been super cool. So I love working for Up Rocks so far.
That's great. And so when you started with Up Rocks, though, it wasn't the job that you thought you were getting.
That is correct. So when I first joined, I was under the impression that I would be working under a good friend of mine who was then the editor. He got a great opportunity to move on from Up Rocks, and I wish him all the best. And so when he left, there was this kind of big void in the whiskey space that I suddenly had to fill. It was very frightening, but at the same time, it's such a great opportunity. And like I said, I was so excited to work for Up Rocks. Just being able to get a bigger role from day one, it was something that I just leapt at. I thought it was a really, really cool opportunity.
That's incredible. That doesn't happen every day. So
No,
you
not
can't
at all.
pass that up. You gotta take that.
I jumped on it.
Yes, and it's working out great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were telling me that you have a trip coming up.
Yes.
That's pretty incredible. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So tell us about that.
I hope so. So we were just talking about rum a second ago. So as soon as I leave from here, I'm going to be going to the Caribbean, to Barbados, to go drink some rum. So it just works out perfectly.
Rough life, Frank.
I know, it's tough. I don't know how I do it.
I know. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's going to be great. I can't wait to read all about that.
Oh,
So-
you will.
Oh, yes, soon enough. So how did that come about, I guess? Is that something where Up Rocks said, hey, Frank, we have this opportunity, or was that an opportunity that came to you elsewhere? Like, how do these leads come in, I guess?
So there's really kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes there are things that I will get from the Up Rocks team because we have such a huge footprint in the whiskey space, in the spirit space, where brands will reach out directly to Up Rocks or my editors. And then sometimes, just because of the following that I've built up and the reputation that I have in the industry, sometimes brands will reach out to me directly and say, we have this opportunity. And the opportunity with Mount Gay was one of the latter. So I had I kind of had a relationship with some of the brand people over at Mount Gay, which is the rum distillery that I'll be visiting. And they reached out. They said, hey, would you like to come visit Barbados and see what we're doing on the production side? And, of course, I said yes.
Great. Well, that works out well then.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to be open-minded. I mean, from Weston down to Barbados.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
Seeing it all.
And you get to see, beautiful locales all around the world. So that's the best part.
That's great. Well, with journalism and bourbon, so I know journalism came first, obviously,
Yes.
kindergarten. Don't think bourbon was a part of your life at that point. So tell me, how did you start drinking bourbon? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so it was funny. Actually, it was one of those situations where I went to a bar and I sat down and the person next to me, obviously someone who's from the town or a local or a regular visitor, and they just go to the bartender, I just want my usual. And I was like, you hear that in TV and in movies. Everyone, it seems, has their kind of go-to drink. And at that point, I didn't really have one. So I started thinking to myself what that go-to drink would be. And so exploring different spirits categories and trying different things, I realized that whiskey was really where I wanted to be. Specifically, bourbon is really what, got my juices flowing and what I really found to be the most flavorful and the thing that I enjoyed the most. So in that kind of journey of figuring out what my go-to drink would be, I landed on bourbon as a general category, and I'm still trying to figure out what exactly my go-to drink is going to be.
Your go-to.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I spend a lot of time with Brendan, who makes fantastic cocktails, so I don't have a go-to either, because there's always something great to try, but I don't think it's bad not to have that go-to, though, just because you want to try all kinds of different things.
I agree.
Right?
Stay curious, and you always have the options in front of you to try something different. So that's what I like.
Well, and it's not like 30 years ago where there really weren't craft cocktails.
That's true, too.
Craft, right? They were cocktails, don't get me wrong.
There were cocktails.
There were cocktails.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They were
now
just
we have
different.
mixologists, and it's just, there's so much building that goes on, and so many different flavors being brought to the table. Also, I like that you're bringing in different spirits from across the world. You see interesting cocktails with things like baijiu or rum, like we mentioned, whiskey. So it's not just your garden variety, vodka, screwdrivers.
Exactly. Well, and like when you say rum, I just haven't had a lot of rum. So
Sure.
then my mind is like, I bet there's some fantastic cocktails you can make.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's really, that makes me want to have some rum. Maybe after this we'll go have some rum.
Come on to Barbados. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. When do we leave? So what else did I want to ask you? I wanted to ask you, if somebody really wanted to learn more about whiskey, how would you recommend that they go about that? Is it tasting? Is it reading? Is it all the above? Where do they go?
Oh, geez. All of the above, for sure.
Yeah.
I would selfishly say reading. Start with reading Up Rocks, because we have a lot of great educational information on there. But the only way to do it is really to taste it yourself. So I would say for a lot of people who are coming maybe from the beer world, or you're more familiar with wine, low ABV spirits, start with something that is in the 80 proof range, and then you can work your way up. But there's a lot of flavorful whiskeys that's 80 proof, 100 proof. Obviously, if you go above that, you're getting some great flavors as well. But I would say start with a low ABV, work your way up on the ABV scale, and read and figure out, what other people are enjoying, what people who have more experience than you enjoy. And then from there, you'll figure out what you like.
That's really good advice. I haven't really had that conversation of the lower ABV, because that's true. We're so used to drinking things at barrel strength, and because that's where we find a lot of flavor, but that might be intimidating to somebody.
Exactly.
Right out of the gate.
And it's one of those things also, I try to encourage people all the time to drink it the way you want to. So if you want to put an ice cube in it, or, all the ice in the world, or a little bit of water, that's fine. Start there, because you're still going to get the flavor in the whiskey, but you're going to enjoy it the way that you want to enjoy it. And it's your palate, so it's really only you who can enjoy it.
You got to start somewhere.
Right.
I really doubt that anybody just takes their very first sip and they're like, this is the best thing I've ever had. You got to work at it,
A little bit acquired taste, yeah.
Figure out what you like.
Sure.
So nothing wrong with that. So let's see. I'm losing my train of thought here. It's still early, guys. It's early.
It's okay.
We did talk a little bit. I wanted to know, you've been running your page, BourbYourEnthusiasm, for about the same amount of time as you've been doing writing.
Yes, that's
whiskey
correct.
writing. So are there any really memorable connections that you've made on that page? Probably too many to count, but any that you would want to share that you wouldn't have made otherwise?
Sure. Too many to count, for sure. I think that there are some really special connections that I've made in the whiskey world. There are people who I've started out enjoying drinks with them, and they've become really good friends. There are also people where we have a more professional relationship, but also they're just genuine supporters and genuine people. So I think making those connections has been really, really important. If I start naming names, we'll be here all day. But I think the people who have become really good friends, those are people who matter the most to me, because we are able to enjoy whiskey together and kind of share that common bond. But also, I'll check in on their families, and they'll ask me how I'm doing and check on my travels and things like that. So those are the connections that matter the most to me.
That's great. I don't know how we first got in touch with you. Do you remember if it was?
Not.
I don't know if it was Noelle that had reached out to you or Audrey. But
that would make the most sense. Noelle has been fantastic, and she's been a great, great outreach person for the brand. I feel like I've seen kind of Ben Holladay grow since the inception, and so being able to chat with Noelle about it and hear some of the things on the ground, even when I wasn't here, because this is my first time coming to Weston, it's been really cool to see. So I really appreciate what she's done in terms of kind of keeping me in the loop with the brand.
That's great. And I always am curious, too, what your first thought was when somebody from Missouri reached out and said, do you want to try our bourbon? Is it like, oh, that's cute? Or were you like, okay, I'll give it a try?
No, I was open-minded because, like I said, I kind of had that acclimation with New York whiskey or New Jersey whiskey. So I was already ready to accept that great bourbon is being made outside of Kentucky. Sorry, Kentucky. So yeah, when I saw that there was this, straight from Missouri bourbon, I love the packaging design, I love the colors, and I was like, you know what, let's give it a go. I'm game. And when I tried it, I was really impressed. I was actually telling Noelle yesterday, I was really impressed that you all waited to release it at 6 years old, because that's just a bold step that a lot of new distilleries do not take. And then come to find out, Ben Holladay is not so new of a distillery. So it makes sense why you kind of took your time with it.
Yeah, that's something that we kind of had to, the story that we had to tell, it's like we have the history, but we had a break too,
yes.
So we're kind of new in that sense.
That's true.
So if you had to choose between the soft red wheat mash bill or the traditional Ben Holladay, which one are you going with?
Wow, is there a gun to my head? That's a tough question.
There is no wrong answer here.
Okay. Honestly, so I don't want to cop out. It is kind of a mood decision, but if I was forced to make a choice, I would go with the red wheat. I think that for me, I like that it's a little bit more mellow, a little bit more rounded, a little bit more sweet. But there is no wrong answer, and I do think that, honestly, I would go with the Rickhouse proof out of the whole lineup. So I'm going to go option C.
Option C. There you go. It's been decided. Rickhouse proof soft red wheat.
That's correct.
Right. Okay,
yes,
yeah. That's what Brendan would choose too.
There we go.
That's his go-to. Yeah, you really can't go wrong though, like you said. So what is your very favorite thing about working in the whiskey industry? I know there are several perks, like what we have discussed, but personally, what do you find to be your very favorite thing?
I think that the best thing about working in the spirit space is that people are just so inclusive. Honestly, this is a relationship business. It is a people business. People come first. And you don't see that in every industry, obviously, right? There's a lot of competition. There are a lot of people who are cutthroat. I think in this industry, it's one where people understand that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so there's less so competition and more so appreciation for what other people are doing. Even in the journalist space, I feel like a lot of my friends who are in the New York City area who are also journalists, we all applaud each other. We're all supporting each other. If we can connect each other with different contacts or share whiskey with one another, that always happens. So I think that's the best part of working in this industry, is that people are actually genuinely trying to help each other.
Yeah, it's a great space for people to just share something they love.
It's true.
That's a very common interest. But you can have very different backgrounds too, which is
true.
But this is what's in common here.
Exactly.
Right here, which is awesome. Well, Frank, I always ask everybody this, and so now it's your turn.
I'm ready.
I know you don't have a usual or a regular cocktail, but if you had to just choose a trash cocktail, this is what I hate to call it trash. There's really no other word for it.
Okay.
I don't know. Is there a better word for it? A classic mixed drink that you just had to go to, like a guilty pleasure. What would that be?
A guilty pleasure drink. Oh, It's tough because I drink so much whiskey neat. And so that's usually my go-to if I'm drinking something. I like to joke that my go-to cocktail would be whiskey with ice, but that's not really a trash cocktail. That's kind of just a cop-out.
That's classy.
Yes, yeah.
It's too classy.
Honestly, so this is going to reflect like New York brunch culture, but I would say like a mimosa, which is like a bottomless mimosa though, like just garbage champagne. I just want the bubbles and the orange juice. That's all I need.
Wow, that's a really good one. I'm on board for that. And since you brought it up, the New York brunch scene,
yes.
I mean, wow.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a big thing.
It's still a thing.
Yes.
I know it always has been.
Of course.
Yeah. So, do you go into the city and do brunch? And
I unfortunately do.
That's
yes.
amazing. It's like a all day, not an all day, but it's kind of an all day.
It can
thing.
be if you go bottomless because there is no bottom to it. But yeah, I'm about 30 minutes outside of New York, so it's super easy for me to pop over, get some pastries, get some bottomless mimosas going, and just live my best Sunday life.
I mean, take the train
Exactly.
and just let it get you there, and
then you're fine.
Wow.
Until you get home.
Yeah. Then you might need a nap. Wow, now I want to go to New York and go to brunch.
Come on down. Yeah,
That
New York,
great.
Barbados, Weston. We've got a whole trip planned.
We're so busy. We need to get booking. Well, this has been great, Frank. I'm so excited to go show you around.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Thanks for coming on Holladay Happy Hour.
My pleasure. This
Cheers.
was absolutely great.
Holladay Happy Hour is a production of the Holladay Distillery, Weston, Missouri. Drink responsibly, drive responsibly.